Network Now, a podcast designed to help build business connections and create opportunities. I'm Lee Foster of Revitalize Connecting People, and with me are the most fabulous ladies you can ever imagine. It's the co-hosts themselves, Julie Taylor and Louisa Stewart of Blue Ninja Business Support. How are you doing, girls?
Very well, thank you.
Good, thanks.
Fabulous, absolutely superb. Well, today it's great to be welcoming to our Network Now week a special guest, a gentleman called Brent Edwards, joining us all the way, believe it or not, from Canada. So, Brent, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate you joining us. Are you well?
Doing great, Lee. It's great to see everyone today. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Thank you very much. And just to give you a bit of an insight into Brent, Brent has got over 30 years of sales, marketing and product development experience in the travel and financial services, market research and not-for-profit sections in the Greater Toronto Area, Ontario, Canada. Brent thrives on building relationships with economic stakeholders across a broad range of industries and markets. In his spare time, he assists newcomers to Canada in achieving their career potential through delivering coaching on professional networking skills and leading workshops on Canadian business culture. He is a frequent guest speaker on networking topics and has been a mentor with the Toronto Region Immigrant Employment Council and a volunteer with the Institute of Canadian Citizenship. Brent makes appearances and as the resident and subject matter expert on professional networking on New Canadians TV. Once again, Brent, welcome to today's Network Now.
It's wonderful to be part of this discussion this week about international networking and the benefits. And great to see everyone again.
Certainly is. Brent, can we start off first? Because I've known you for quite a while now. We've known each other for a few years, bridging across the pond from Canada to Glasgow. And you've got used to my accent, I think, slightly anyway. I've got used to yours ever so slightly as well. Where did your sort of networking journey start? Where did it all begin for you?
So I guess there's the networking journey with my passion project, Brent Canada Experiences in helping the newcomers, which started about 5 years ago. But I've been involved with networking ever since I got into sales in the travel industry over 30 years ago. I know, Leon, one of your earlier sessions, you were talking about your experience working for an American company in the UK, while I happen to work for a British company, Thomas Cook, in Canada. So from the very beginning of my career in sales and business development, I was networking with colleagues across the pond and international markets. So it's been something I've been involved with for so many years. The new technology has made it so much easier to do, but and I've also worked in jobs where I've had reporting structures reporting into the UK or reporting into the US. So it's something where building relationships with people that you may have never met before is kind of second nature. It's made a lot easier with the new technology.
Thanks, Brent.
Oh, it's incredible, isn't it? I mean, I think when you talk about networking and sort of bridging gaps and all that, it could be years and years and years of new developments, new connections, couldn't it? And starting to form those relationships. But Brent, where was the biggest challenge in your networking journey, or the tipping point in sort of understanding how to network well and how to engage with the right people for you?
So if we go back to the beginning, even before the pandemic, when I started my passion project to help newcomers, it was giving over my own fear of putting myself out there. So I was used to building relationships within corporations, across borders, but there's really kind of a set of rules, unspoken or not, in terms of how you build business with clients or with internal colleagues. But going and putting my foot forward around helping newcomers around my passion project, I was dealing with a lot of small businesses, which I hadn't dealt with before, dealing across markets, dealing with people who potentially could have been competitors. And I know it's something you've also addressed in some of your other shows. that was a bit of the fear, was being willing to put myself forward, and especially on social media. A bit of some fears and trepidation, but that's probably a hurdle I had to get over, and realize that other people were telling me that there was value in the services I was providing, and that there was an audience out there who wanted to learn about Canadian business culture and learn about professional networking. And I had some skills to help them. So that helped push me to be more active on social media. So I think that was the biggest challenge for me.
So you're helping expats come into Canada. So that's the project.
Not so much expats, new immigrants. So these are people who've immigrated from anywhere in the world. I do a lot of my work with people who are immigrating from the subcontinent. So India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. And actually quite a few of them have made their way to Canada via the Middle East through UAE or Qatar, etc. So they are coming in as new immigrants or permanent residents. But in a lot of cases, the way that they've been used to networking in their home countries has been quite different than their experience in Canada. And even people who are coming from Australia, which I know you have connections to, Louisa, or the Netherlands or the UK. There's subtleties where people get tripped up if they're not aware of business culture and Canadian communication styles, which we all make assumptions about other markets and regions and communities and sectors in terms of how to communicate, but there are some things that can trip people up that they may not be expecting. So that's where I feel I can help them out.
And do you feel like the style is quite formal in Canada, or is it quite informal when networking? I tend to think of Canadians as more informal, but maybe my assumption is quite wrong.
Well, it's a bit of a difficult question to answer. So the business market is much more informal than it was 30 years ago when I started my career. I mean, we were wearing suits every day when I was working at Thomas Cook and business development, and suits aren't the thing anymore. So there's been a level of informality that has come in, but it also depends on what part of the country you're in. Just much as if you're in Scotland or Wales or Northern Ireland or England, and what parts of the region. It's similar in Canada. I grew up in the West Coast in Vancouver, which is even more informal. I live in Toronto, which is kind of the business and financial hub of the country. But even some of the pace of business, we think things are move very fast in Toronto. But I've spoken to people who've moved here from Delhi or Mumbai, and they compare living in Canada as like a marathon race versus the market that they came from, and where they were networking was much more like a 100-meter sprint. So there's there are definitely regional differences that you got to keep in mind in terms of dealings with making connections with Canadians.
And obviously we've seen technology change and brought sort of things more in touch with people. What other changes have you seen?
Oh, well, just the fact that we're able to connect seamlessly, whether it's through Zoom or Skype or Teams, etc. There's so many opportunities that are available if you choose to collaborate internationally. A Zoom call away, you can uncover new clients, new markets. You can build your brand awareness. What I've also found is you can differentiate yourself if you're one of the few people from your market attending some of these other events. There are people that you can do podcasts with, similar to what Lee and I have done. There's referrals that you can get. You can learn market intelligence. So there's so many opportunities that the technology makes possible. So definitely a lot of upsides to being able to use technology. For example, one of my fairly new connections from a couple of years ago is in Melbourne, Australia, and she runs a networking group in Melbourne. And she actually had invited me to join her networking group in Melbourne, even though it was 14 hours time difference. So I was actually able to join in with Australians, which wasn't possible. I've been part of networking groups run out of Boston. We have a collaborator of mine does a lot of LinkedIn work, educating people from India and Pakistan. So we've had a podcast, and I've been able to join in with him on providing some perspectives on Canada, and we've been able to reach a whole audience in the Indian subcontinent. So it's just been really neat, awe-inspiring, and kind of inspiring that there's so many different people out there that you can connect with.
But do you think there's any disadvantages? I suppose you could get a little bit spoiled for choice now, as long as you're, willing to get up early or stay late. You could network all over the world, but is there any disadvantages that comes from all this opportunity?
I love getting up at 5 a.m. for Lee's events. So,
Okay.
but if the event is worthwhile enough, which all of Lee's revitalized business events are, it is worth getting up at 5 a.m. to attend. And I've been doing that for over a year, so for sure. But answer to your question in terms of disadvantages, I don't know. I can't think of actually there are a lot of disadvantages. I think it's more of mindset that you're going in with, that you're open, that you're willing to share. I know that in some of the other speakers you've talked about, challenges around accents, and I would say one of the beyond slang that is use of idioms. So we all have grown up using idioms in our own markets, whether they're related to history or sports or entertainment. You really need to sit back and think about the number of times that you use idioms or expressions or analogies in your speech. And I use them a lot. And I've realized in speaking with some of the newcomers that these are challenges. There was one example where I had mentioned to who became a client of mine, that I was going to be in his neck of the woods, which means, that, I'm going to be in his neighborhood. Well, he kind of played along. It was a good guy. And it wasn't until later that it was like this necking in the woods.
That could mean something different.
What does this mean? So, but it's okay. I've learned a lot about cricket expressions and rugby expressions, and it's just being conscious that your language is, there's another one, peppered with all these different expressions which you take for granted, and really is a shorthand to communicate with people who know the language or the lingo. And you've got to just be very careful overusing that, especially in international markets where you're on Zoom and it's harder to pick up on people's facial features and body language to tell that they may not know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So
it's so funny you mentioned that, because there was a situation when I met somebody face-to-face networking, and I was very conscious they were from a different culture, different background, not a native English speaker, and it was like I'd sort of pushed the button to just speak in tongues. It was so weird, and I was just like, I don't know what's going on here, and it was just like, I'm really sorry. It was just like, so it's definitely something to watch out for. And also, if you're working with teams cross-culturally, check understanding that, I'm very aware I've got an accent, we've all got accents, is especially when you get excited about things, you talk really fast, and it's just that whole, just slow down, just take a chill pill and ask at the end, is that clear? And we have work placements that work with us, so I always make sure that they repeat back to me what they understand the task to be as well. So and terminology as well, because we're all a little bit guilty of that. But I think being in a really varied networking group, which like Lee's is, that does stop us in our tracks from just throwing out those TLAs, those 3-letter acronyms.
Yeah, and
that does stop us.
Yeah, I heard about your TLAs. I've worked in financial services. So we had a lot of
Oh
three-letter
yeah, we
acronyms
love
too.
a
So,
TLA. Yeah. I'll share the blog afterwards.
being in Toronto, that I'm not sure if the accents is as much of a challenge, because I'm so used to hearing all different accents every single day, whether I'm on the subway or on the transit, or walking along the streets, or in the office. It's just I think it's more how people are using the language is more of a challenge for understanding. I found in this market.
Yeah, some really interesting points there. And Brent, how would you test and measure a network that fits you? Because you've got sort of two different, I guess, networks that you're in, if that's the right way to describe it. How would you measure the networks working for you?
Good question in terms of assessment. I know people have talked about potentially it being the amount of business that's coming from it, but networking is a long-term investment. It's a marketing strategy. It's not it's not transactional. That's something I reinforce to a lot of my clients. Is it's not transactional. So in terms of measuring the availability, I guess a lot of it depends on the organizer in terms of how much value they're bringing. Are you learning something? Are you making connections with people you don't know? One piece of advice I give is around making sure that you're diversifying your network. So if you look at your network like a stock portfolio, you want to be diversified. You don't want to have everyone just in one particular industry. If we had done that at the beginning of the pandemic, people within certain sectors would maybe not have the network that could take them forward 5 years. And I think part of it's also, yes, you need to make some judgments whether you're getting value from your discussions, but there's also, you don't want to make assumptions about the people if they can't provide immediate benefit to you, that you don't want to connect with them, because you don't know who they are, you don't know who they were, you don't know who they will become, and you don't know who they know. So you want to be really careful around writing people off or making judgments about them without them knowing you. And I know, Lee, you've had some personal experience about that, going back a few years in your career, where people were making some judgments about the role you were in. It's happened to me as well. And it's fairly short-sighted, and especially with the pandemic and how we are now so much more connected, you don't want to do that.
So yesterday we introduced Christine to Lee's Who Knows What You Know.
Yeah.
We love it. Absolutely.
Who knows what you know?
But it's so true, though. It's like I was speaking to people today, and somebody asked me today. They went, "Lee, what's the target market? The networks that you're part of? Is there a target market for what I offer?" And I says, "Well, yes, there is, but you won't know until you actually meet them. And in fairness, your target market will be the people who they know." And it's always so true. It's that phrase of you've really got to educate. And I love the way you say gaining knowledge from networking, Brent.
Yeah.
Getting an understanding, generating information, not transactional. Whereas it used to be selling to the room. It's not about selling to the room. It's about that. We've heard it so many times, haven't we? Really, it's yeah.
Oh, but the room today is like it is so broad. I mean, we're on LinkedIn. We've all got hundreds or thousands of connections. There's so many people we have relationships with. So when you're meeting one-on-one, it's almost your thousands of connections are meeting with the thousands of connections of the person you're meeting with. And and if that person directly may not be able to assist you, the odds are they know somebody 1 or 2 steps away who could collaborate with you, work with you, might be a client, might be a new employee, might be a supplier. So there's just, the world is your oyster, as they say. But again, that's using another idiom or anecdote, which I warn people not to use. So
I can't help thinking of them now. When you were just answering the question, then I was just like, "Don't put all your eggs in one basket." And I'm like, "Oh, here we go!" And it's just like it's going to be like idiom bingo, isn't it?
Yeah, can't see the wood for the trees. That's
Yeah.
another one that comes up as well. It's just what wood? Trees? I don't know. What's
We
that
might
about?
we might have to do a network now bingo card on phrases. See how many we can get.
Phrases that come up. There's a question I want to ask you just before we get to the question I want to ask you after this one as well. It's we looked at the pandemic and when that kicked in. We don't talk a lot about it, right? But when you were networking then, was it overwhelming when because the boundaries, the doors were broken open for you, the seal of now communicating across the globe? Did you find that was even more out, working in the life of like virtual networking? Did it open up the doors further for you, Brent?
Oh, it definitely opened up the doors further for me because I think part of it is because I'm working with people who've come from other countries. So it just helped me understand cross-cultural differences. It gave me quite a few opportunities to be on podcasts, get the message out around how I was able to help people. I just found it exhilarating. I thought it was really interesting to be able to be on TV shows with our friend Ashley Owens in Philadelphia and be on your podcast, Lee. And there was a podcast I did with a friend of mine who I'd met online who's in Salt Lake, and she does a lot of work with technology firms in India who are doing business in the States, and we did a podcast. So it was there was all these opportunities available to pick which ones, and there was just so many people that it was great to collaborate with. So
yeah, it's like Sheldon Rummers and everybody else who we've dealt with as well. We spoke with Sheldon and had conversations with her as well. So what would be your key advice to somebody who's watching and listening today to having an international networking footprint? If someone's out there thinking, how can I get my feet out there? How can I get them wet from even transferring across the pond, if you want to call it that way? What would be your advice, Brent?
Okay, so I've got a few tips here. So just start with kind of a few lessons I learned. One, people are not your competitors. The marketplace for whatever product you talk about is so large, and I know you've talked about coaches, and each of the coaches is kind of a differentiated and they're unique. It's so true. And that was something I needed to get away from. It was like, oh, okay, they're looking to help newcomers too, or they provide immigrant services. Well, there's so many newcomers to Canada that need assistance to help with their careers that we're all only helping a small percentage. So if I can collaborate people, that'd be great. Going overseas can make you stand out. Have a plan B mindset. So just because you've got your plans that something this might work, you can try it out. I mean, Lee, you and Ian we tried Clubhouse, right?
Yeah.
And I remember being on a beach in summer vacation in the Gaspé Peninsula of Quebec and on the Clubhouse with yourself and Ian. And we did that for several weeks. And, I think it was good learnings and probably helped me with potential podcasts and helped you with Network Now. So be willing to try that, use it, for learnings, right? Everything's not necessarily going to work out for the best, but you're going to learn something from it. The pandemic put all of us on common ground, and businesses want to learn from other markets. In terms of the steps to take to give a more direct answer to your question, which I haven't seemed to be doing so far today, prioritize your markets. So I wanted to focus on the US, I wanted to focus on the UK, I wanted to focus on the Republic of Ireland, just because these are markets that do networking a similar way. So I wanted to make connections there. I learned that by responding first to posts. So if anyone posts, if you're one of the first responders into a post and put your comments in, then it can really assist to help you with good visibility. Be a connector to connect people from other markets. Start your own podcast. That's what Hamad Siddiqui and I did, and we did about 12 of them. Now he's gone on to run training courses, and he's got I don't know, close to 100,000 followers on LinkedIn now. So his business has taken off, but we had a lot of learnings from collaborating together. And I would say act now. Yes, the pandemic, hopefully we're going to start to see it in the rearview mirror. It's not gone, it's not over, but its impact is changing. And people are going to start moving back to kind of their comfort zone and their local markets. So I would say jump on the opportunity now, while people are still working from home, have some flexibility. This is the time to do it.
Yeah. Thanks, Brent. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
So I think that just about wraps it up for today. Now, Brent, do you have any sort of things you're launching just now? Any special offers you'd like to share with people on listening today?
Yes. Yes, definitely. So I'm starting to work on a podcast of my own. This would be about redirecting your Canadian ambitions. So it's going to be for both newcomers to Canada and established Canadians who are looking to move to another part of the country to jumpstart their career. There's a lot of, there's differences between the provinces, the considerations around moving and job search. And I feel with some of my own personal experience and experience of people close to me, and also with my guests, something I think we can provide some value and assistance on. So looking forward to launching that in the next couple of months.
Sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Brent, for joining us on Network Now. Some really amazing tips. I'm going to watch out for my idiom bingo now. And some really good advice there. And yeah, the work for everybody, all about mindset and things like that. You definitely need that before you start. So tomorrow we'll be joined by Robert Herkus, an online health coach who helps burned out professionals to reignite their energy and productivity. Robert's story is going to be really interesting, and he's recently relocated to the UAE from the UK, so well worth joining us for his insights on the challenges of moving and building new networks.
So make sure you're following us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and subscribe to YouTube on the Revitalize and Blue Ninja social media platforms. And check out the podcast Network Now on Anchor FM and Spotify for other great conversations.
Thank you very much. Thanks again, Brent, for being our guest today. I really appreciate it and wish you all the very best with all your endeavors, and especially the podcast channel you're coming out very, very soon as well. And myself and Julie and Louisa will see you again for Network Now very, very soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Louisa. Thanks, Lee.